mean, I was broke and very publicly wrong, and that hurt. And yet, that ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. Sometimes painful things are really good. And what that gave me was a fear of being wrong, that gave me a humility, that gave me an open-mindedness that I needed in order to be successful. And so I wanted to find the smartest people I could who would disagree with me. Because in other words, if I can get the smartest people and I hear their reasoning, I would raise my probability of being right. And so the real question was simultaneously, how do I know I'm right? And in that process, I raised my probability of being right by learning the art of thoughtful disagreement, trying to find people who disagree with me. One of the keys to success is what you don't know and how to deal with that well, or knowing that you don't know enough. And wouldn't it be great if we all had idea meritocratic decisions so that you could get the right answer on the basis of merit? In our case, we do what I'll call believability weighted decision making. I'll explain what that is. You have to get past your disagreement. You should have a protocol for that. Okay, so this is how life has looked for me, going after my audacious goals, and then encountering successes and failures, but most importantly, and the most important thing about the failures is you get more lessons out of the failures than you get out of your successes. And that's the learning process, right? I don't think failures are as appreciated as they should be, because they provide really learning, and it really has to do with, I think, how you deal with failure. Failure produces pain, and so I have an expression that pain plus reflection equals progress. Pain plus quality reflection equals progress. That's been my experience. And then because I'm in the markets, or because I'm an entrepreneur trying to be successful, and when you encounter those things, you encounter them a lot. My mentality, my state of mind about them began to change. And so I started to look at problems like puzzles that would give me gems if I could solve the puzzle. And the puzzle was, what would I do differently in the future? And the gems were principles that I would write down for doing something different in the future so that I don't make the same mistakes again and I don't have those pains. And then I would write down those principles. And so the failure helped me learn principles. And then by learning those principles and changing, then I improved. Then I went after the more audacious goals, and that's what it looks like to me. If I would describe it, I think success, achieving success in whatever you're going after, happens in 5 steps. In other words, first, you have to know your goals. What are your specific goals? And you've got to be focused on those goals. And then on the way to your goals, you have to identify and not tolerate your problems. Those are your barriers that stand in the way of you getting to your success. And how you approach that is really important. Then, with those specific problems in mind, you have to diagnose those problems to get at their root cause. And their root cause is often what you don't do well or what somebody else doesn't do well, and you can't let the barrier, an ego barrier, stand in the way of looking at those things. It could be whatever it is that the root cause. You have to diagnose that particular problem and get at that root cause, and then as a result, you have to design. Step 4 is that you have to design something different. You have to design a change. How would you make that approach to it better? And then you have to follow up. So you have to have your goals crystal clear. You will encounter your problems on the ways to your goals. You have to get at that root diagnosis, including whatever weaknesses you or the system that you're developing has. You have to have the design to get around those specific problems. And then you have to have the capacity to follow through with that design. And if you do that, anybody does that, they do it over and over again, you can't help but be successful, in my opinion. So if people fail, they fail at one of those things. And because of our nature, people have strengths and weaknesses. We're weak at one or two of those types of things, and that stands in the way of the success. So what I want to give you is an example of a situation that happened to me. The upshot was making a big mistake. So in the late 70s, I had calculated that American banks had lent a lot more money to foreign countries than those countries were going to be able to pay back. And then I estimated that we would have a very big debt crisis and we'd have a very big economic crisis. This was a very controversial point of view. So I got a lot of attention for this controversial point of view. As a result of that, Mexico defaulted in August of 1982. A lot of countries had problems. And as a result of that, I got a lot of attention. I was asked to testify to Congress. I was on Wall Street Week. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. That was the exact bottom in the stock market. I lost money for me. I lost money for my clients. I lost so much money that I had to let everybody in my company go. I didn't have a big company then. I don't know, there was 8 people or something. And I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad to pay for my family bills. I mean, I was broke and very publicly wrong, and that hurt. And yet, that ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. Sometimes painful things are really good. And what that gave me was a fear of being wrong, that gave me a humility, that gave me an open-mindedness that I needed in order to be successful. And so I wanted to find the smartest people I could who would disagree with me. Because in other words, if I can get the smartest people and I hear their reasoning, I would raise my probability of being right. And so the real question was, simultaneously, how do I know I'm right? And in that process, I raised my probability of being right by learning the art of thoughtful disagreement, trying to find people who disagree with me. So, I've got this perspective reflected in the child. I think that there's so much attention paid to knowing what you know. Oh, you're a smart guy, you know a lot, and so on. And everybody's proud about what they know, and I think knowing is great. But I think that one of the keys to success is knowing what you don't know and how to deal with that well, or knowing that you don't know enough. In other words, that open-mindedness that lets you to bring in that. So humility, like all you want to do if you want to be successful is just find the right things to do wherever you can get it. And if you can get it from other places or other people, that's great, right? So I don't care if the success or the decision comes from me. I just want the best one possible. So I wanted to build a culture that's an idea meritocracy. Okay, I'm in a bit, as an entrepreneur and a investment manager, I have to bet against the consensus and be right. In other words, the consensus is built into the price in the markets. So when you're placing a bet, you have to think differently and be successful. So I have to be an independent thinker in order to be successful. Same for an entrepreneur. And so what I wanted was a culture of independent thinkers. I want to bring in people who, and by independent thinkers, that means that we're going to have a lot of disagreement, and that disagreement is a really good thing. So I wanted that, and in order to do that, bring in these independent thinkers who also had audacious goals, and I wanted to have then an idea meritocracy. Okay, so this is the big thing. Can you have an idea meritocracy in which there's great collective decision making? And I want to talk about the power of an idea meritocracy and how to really have it. And then through our idea meritocracy, we had to develop principles and systemized rules of how we would be with each other. And then we had our successes and our failures. And as a result of the failures, we learned more. We built these things, these rules, decision rules, into algorithms that help us make decisions. That compounded effect of algorithms, we should talk about that. That's big. And then as a result, you have your successes, and you have happier employees, and you have happier clients. And then you go on for more audacious goals. And basically, that's what we call this looping. And we've been doing this looping for that period of time. And I want to explain it to you so that I pass it along, because I think it's been unique and great in certain ways, but it's very different. So what do I mean by to have an idea meritocracy? Like, wouldn't it be great if we all had idea meritocratic decisions so that you could get the right answer on the basis of merit? So I think there are 3 things that you need to do in order to have an idea meritocracy. First, you have to put your honest thoughts on the table, and other people have got to put their honest thoughts on the tables. And most people don't do that. Most people have these things in their minds, but they're not radically truthful with each other. So you have to put your honest thoughts on the table. Second thing is you have to understand the art of thoughtful disagreement. In other words, to appreciate disagreement, to be curious about the other person's point of view, to work it through so that you can get at the best answer. Because if there's disagreement, if two people disagree, how do you know the one that's wrong isn't you? So you have to understand the art, the ability to take it in, how do you change, and how do you move forward to what is likely the best thing. So there's an art to this thoughtful disagreement brought about by curiosity and so on. So it works. I mean, it's a sensible thing. And then third, of course, like any organization or any family, if there's disagreements that remain, you have to have protocols for getting past that disagreement. In our case, we do what I'll call believability weighted decision making. I'll explain what that is, but you have to get past your disagreement. You should have a protocol for that.
Check out this viral video next, where Ray Dalio reveals how the current economic crisis is much worse than we thought it was and what to buy to preserve your wealth.